The best exercise for your biceps, it's not curls. All right, guys. I know.
Wait a minute.
I know. Everybody's like, big biceps, got to do the
Where
curls.
do we even go, from here?
All right, I'm going to tell a story right now of when I really pieced this together. I had a gymnast that worked for me as a trainer years ago. This dude was about, 5'10", jacked, like incredible arms. Like, you ever seen like competitive gymnasts, male gymnasts in particular, female gymnasts too, but male gymnasts, they just have like these like amateur bodybuilding looking arms. And I asked him once, like, what do you do for your biceps? Your arms look crazy. And he goes, chin-ups. I'm like, that's a back exercise. He goes, no, it's a bicep exercise if you do it like this. And he jumps up on the bar, gets a curl grip, and rather than pulling his chest to the bar, he does this kind of like compound lift for his biceps. And then it dawned on me, if I want my quads to really grow, it's not leg extensions, it's squats, right?
Yeah.
If I want to build a bigger back, it's not pullovers, it's rows, right? So it's like a compound lift for the biceps. In fact, we often accept that for triceps, like close grip bench press or dips.
Right.
For some reason, biceps, we don't do that. Anyway, started doing them, and they're hard, so they're really advanced, and made a huge, it put the curls to shame.
Because they're hard.
Yeah.
I think that's where it is, right? It's so much easier to just look in the mirror and pump it up. Like
is that what you think we do?
You know what? That's a really good point you bring up, and I wonder why that is. Everybody is pretty familiar with close grip bench press for your triceps. We talk about it all the time. It's not the first time I've heard anyone talk. It's popular, but you don't hear that often about supinated pull-ups as a great bicep exercise, like people. But that's a perfect comparison. It's very similar to what the incline press is for triceps, but for biceps. And no one talks about it.
I think Justin hit it right. It's hard as hell. So first off, doing a supinated grip chin up or pull up is hard anyway. But now, rather than pulling your chest to the bar, right, you're kind of focused on the biceps. And because it's so supinated, some people have issues with their wrists. So one thing you can do is if you can find a bar. PRX has this, right? So we work with a company called PRX, and they have.
I love their handle grips.
Yeah, multiple grips, and one of them is supinated, but it's almost like an easy curl bar, so it's kind of like this. That's excellent for doing what I'm about to, what I'm demonstrating. But you do got to pull with the biceps, not as much with the back. So you're not doing this; you're pulling like this, and it just blows up the biceps. You know who does a lot of that exercise?
You're a little protracted with your shoulders then, as opposed to
just like with close grip bench press, like you're putting the emphasis on the triceps. With this kind of a pull up, you're putting the emphasis on the biceps. You know what? There's one athlete that does a lot of those types of
friend of ours?
Chin ups. No, we don't know anybody that does. Okay. But there's one category of athletes that relies on very, very strong arms and biceps.
Besides a gymnast,
arm wrestlers. Arm wrestlers do lots of those kinds of chin-ups. In fact, if you watch...
Really? Do you call them athletes?
Yeah, bro, come on. You ever arm wrestle? Like
no, I know. I'm going to offend everybody. I'm just like...
Not everybody.
It's like a novelty thing.
Yeah, well, I mean...
I don't know.
Let's
call them athletes.
Yeah, well, I mean, if in the Olympics they have baton twirling, I'm pretty sure arm wrestling is a sport.
I feel like if I can call men's physique a sport, you should be able to call arm wrestling a sport.
For sure,
100%.
For sure. But those guys and girls, they do exercises like that, and then you'll see top arm wrestlers. They'll often demonstrate one arm pull-ups. And you'll notice that it's all bicep when they do the pull up, and their arms are, for strength athletes, they have incredible looking arms and biceps. But yeah, I did this, and I still do this every once in a while. And there's no bicep exercise that I've done that will hit my arms the same way.
No, I like that a lot, and in that elbow position too. There's not a lot of bicep exercises that emulate that either. That's another feature about that. So, yes, compound lift, heavy, hard, novel, all those things for sure. And then also, how many machines do you know where your elbow is positioned up by your ears?
Not just that, it's up by your ears, and then as the exercise progresses, it now moves through this wild range of motion.
Yeah,
my elbow goes from behind by my head to in front of my body to my side, all within the same exercise. So what happens essentially is if you look at the bicep that's connected in 2 points, we're going to simplify. There's 2 heads, but let's just simplify, right? There's 2 points, and when it contracts, it brings them together. But what bicep curl exercises bring this part of the bicep closer to this one, right? So when I do this, it's the part that's pulling my lower arm up. When you're doing a chin up, it's doing this almost to both sides. So it's a very different feel, different pull. And I'm going to give everybody a warning. If you do these, be careful because they will wreck your arms like nothing you've ever done before. They're really, really tough. And the pump is absolutely insane, but it's a compound lift for the biceps.
So you're probably right, Justin. That's probably why they are really hard because it's hard for people to do regular pull-ups. It's even harder when you're trying not to let the back involve. The back's the biggest part of that movement, and when you take it out and you try and use,
I mean, it's going to be involved.
Well, and plus you have so many cable machines and different like machines specifically geared for biceps because it's like a favorite muscle of people to work, and so you have all these other options that are like much easier to just get into. That's just something like you really have to. It's a lot more demanding to get to do something like that.
Yeah, my tip would be if you've never tried this, is to assist it with a band first. So you can really concentrate on the form and hopefully get like 5 to 10 reps versus, struggling just to get 1 or 2.
You can also make this a pumping exercise with a lat pull down bar. So you can use lighter weight, like you're going to do a lat pull down, grab that supinated grip, and then do what I said where you're focusing on the biceps on the way down. And because the weight's lighter, you can do more reps. You'll get a crazy pump. But it's a compound lift for the biceps.
So I actually used to do lat pull down bar and bicep curls behind my head. So that was like an extra because again, trying to go after that elbow position. That's not a lot of machines, and you can't with gravity, right? You obviously do it with free weight stuff. So you have to find creative ways to target the bicep from that elbow position, and so that used to be an exercise that I love to do, which is the lat pull down bar
behind the head.
Sitting down, and then I'm curling to the back of my neck.
That's a gnarly squeeze, by the way.
It is.
It's a very, very strange squeeze. You don't feel like with any other exercise. But again, if we listed the top 1 or 2 exercises per body part in terms of just sheer muscle and strength building, effectiveness. And I want to be clear, all exercises have value if applied appropriately. This includes isolation exercises, correctional exercises, and compound lifts. But if you were to list the top 2 or 3, like just muscle building movements for each body part, what you'll see are compound lifts. Like the number 1 shoulder builder is going to be a press, right? The number 1 chest builder is a horizontal press. The number 1 back exercise, a row or a pull down or a pull up.
Yeah, they just skipped right over biceps. I think that is really interesting. Yeah, that we've associated even triceps, like you said, with like dips, and you can do things where you're doing a compound lift, but biceps just seems like there isn't anything for it.
And I think if people did it and then started to understand how to feel it, because once you do it, it's going to feel kind of weird at first, especially if you've always done pull-ups a particular way. It's like a different kind of pulling yourself up. And again, the risk of injury is high because the tension's high and you might not have the technique or form. So I think what you gave was great advice, Adam, to start light with assistance or even, like I said, with a lat pull-down bar. But once you get into the groove of it and feel it, you'll be like, what the hell? I've been missing out on such an effective bicep exercise.
You could also use the tips that we've given around isometrics to help you figure this out too, right? So I would get a band underneath there, have somebody do an isometric hold at the bottom, thinking about squeezing and flexing bicep, and then another one where you're all the way to the top, squeezing and focusing on there.
Oh, like you're just holding yourself above the bar?
Exactly. Just holding yourself at the top and holding yourself at the bottom will help you engage the biceps more when you try and practice a movement like that you're not used to. This is one of the other great values of isometrics is when you're trying to do an exercise that traditionally isn't for that specific muscle group, doing an isometric contraction for the muscle you do want to work in that will help you
connect.
They're just good for familiarizing yourself with that contraction, that movement, and what you're trying to produce out of it.
It's funny. I've been going through studies on isometrics. Funny you bring this up, right? And the studies show that there's obviously when you work out, use resistance, the goals typically are strength and muscle building. Isometrics, the muscle building effect you get from them, now it's shorter lived, but the initial muscle gain and strength gain is actually faster than you get from traditional lifting. So what happens when you incorporate isometrics is you get this very steep and dramatic rise in muscle and strength. Now it starts to plateau if you don't incorporate traditional exercises, which is why it's my belief that isometrics are best used to supplement traditional resistance training. But man, if you read the literature on the strength gains and the muscle gains in short periods of time, it's nothing matches isometrics.
Now, what's
such an effective way to summon the troops?
What's your theory on why it does have quicker results?
That's why.
Yeah, because it's neuromuscular. It's you're tapping into that central nervous system response of like, hey, like I'm going to need to activate more muscle fibers because I'm placing more intensity and demand on this particular squeeze. And so you can actually ramp that up and get more of a response. But now you actually have to then, from there, like you said, you have to go into those lifts where it actually places the load and everything else to account for.
Yeah, so you think you're actually recruiting more muscle fibers isometrically contracting than doing a full contraction?
It's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact. So once you're well trained,
you're squeezing way more potential out.
Yes. So really tapping into and activating muscle fibers is part of the goal, right, with resistance training. And what you'll find with experienced athletes, especially experienced strength athletes, is they can activate more of their muscle fibers than the average person. I don't know what the number is, but it's significant, right? Isometrics make that happen much faster, probably because there's a shorter learning curve. So like you take
That's what I would have said. It's easier. It's easier to figure out where there's more room for error in a traditional full range of motion lift.
Yes.
There's like someone can do, for example, let's take a very basic, easy one, bicep curls. And when they're actually doing a full contraction, many times it starts off really well bicep, but then shoulders kick in and momentum kicks in. And so you lose some of the value as far as keeping it all focused on the bicep versus I take a bar and I put it halfway up in an isometric contraction and I just squeeze and flex the bicep. I feel like
it's much more localized.
Yeah, it's localized. It's easy to localize it. There's less room for error. And like I'm not going to be squeezing that and my calves light up or my
well, you'd have to basically go through each one of those angles isometrically to maintain that same amount of intense tension. So it requires a lot more focus to get to that point.
It also causes less muscle damage than both eccentric and concentric contractions. So concentric is like going up, eccentric is going down.
And now that's the part that I find interesting because you say that it recruits more muscle fibers, but then yet it does less damage.
It does less damage.
That's really interesting.
Yes, because of the sliding filament theory, which is like, okay, so muscle fibers, okay, we're going to get all weird here, but muscle fibers run along each other. And the prevailing theory as to how muscles contract is they attach to each other while they're sliding past each other and contract and hold. But as you do the contraction, some of these attachments break, and that's what causes the damage or inflammation. Well, an isometric hold, they attach, they hold, and they contract. So there's less potential for damage. Eccentric, right, lowering causes the most damage because as you lower, you're breaking a lot of these.
They're spreading apart.
Yeah, and that's the theory, right? So you can do, so here's like the cool thing about isometrics, you can do them frequently. So I can hammer my, chest maybe a couple days a week or a few days a week. I could do isometrics every day at my level, right? So a beginner maybe less, but it's less damage, which is cool because you can ramp up volume without worrying so much about overtraining. So whatever routine you're doing, you may think, I want to add a little bit. Isometrics is a great way to do it. In fact, isometrics is one of those lost arts of resistance training. It was so heavily favored at the turn of the 19th century, the strongmen and all those guys, Eugene Sandow and all those, strongmen and women that did just incredible feats of strength. Isometrics was a staple in their training.
That also highlights why things like kin stretch are so much better than just traditional yoga. Right? So both of them are taking you in these stretched positions, but kin stretch includes the isometric contraction in there where you're really intensifying. So you're building muscle in that new range of motion that you normally
it's about being strong in those poses.
Right. You're not just stretching into that position and relaxing and holding that position. You're actually isometrically contracting in there. So you're recruiting all these extra muscle fibers and actually building some strength in that newfound range of motion.
You know who's a huge fan of isometrics? I've said this before. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee did resistance training. He was one of the first martial artists to do it. In fact, he worked with bodybuilders at the time and
to develop his physique and everything too.
Because he noticed that the story goes that this is legend, but I don't know if it's true. He wrote this himself, but he says that he got into a fight, he won, but then he was so surprised at how fatigued he was and how weak his body felt at the end. So he said, I need to do more physical conditioning. Well, resistance training became a part of it. And obviously Bruce Lee, not a big guy, but at the time, probably one of the most muscular people on screen, actually inspired a lot of pro bodybuilders to become bodybuilders. I know Flex Wheeler talked about Bruce Lee being one, does that lat spread in the beginning when he's kind of warming up to fight or whatever. And isometrics was a huge part of his routine. And it was said that he could hold I want to say 200-pound dumbbell at arm's length and hold it steady. And he said the isometrics gave him incredible punching power because of the stability that he developed. So it really does work. It's not so popular nowadays, which is interesting, probably because it's not sexy, but I foresee this being the next big thing in fitness. Again, of course, usually it's the old stuff that comes back. So it's not going to be the next big thing. It's the next old thing that becomes the next big thing.
Yeah, I've been way ahead of my time with a lot of these things. So we'll see if it catches up.
Or way behind, however you look at it.
Yeah, way behind. Either way you look at it, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, you can find the full episode here, or you can find other clips over here. And be sure to subscribe.